Many women think about abandoning work when they're going through the menopause, but that doesn't have to be you.
This is happening to women at their peak of their careers. Because of these symptoms that we're getting, we might go, that's it, I'm stepping back, I'm going to reduce my hours. Now, that's a financial impact then to the company. So if they've got programs in place so we can better educate and understand what we're going through, it's going to only gain for the company.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth and Women podcast from the Personal Finance Society. I'm Emma Hall and today we're talking about the menopause and perimenopause. Symptoms like hot flushes, brain fog and mood swings don't conveniently switch off when the working day begins. For many women, they can have a big impact on their careers, their confidence and their financial well-being. In fact, research shows that a significant number of women consider leaving work altogether because of menopausal symptoms. So this isn't just a health issue, it's a workplace issue and a financial one too. So, how can women better manage their symptoms at work? And how do you start a conversation with your boss about something that can feel quite personal? To explore all this and more, I'm joined by my lovely colleagues, Alina, Hazel Bowen and Tracy Brooks. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
We're talking about menopause, perimenopause.
Yes.
Before we do that, though, I thought it'd be really good to go back a bit further and talk about the menstrual cycle, because I think that has quite a big impact on family life and work life and that sort of thing. And I was looking at research, and apparently between the ages of 12 and 51, women go through between 400 and 500 periods in their lifetime, which is about 10 years. So actually, if our behaviours are changing and everything else, it's quite an important topic to discuss. Hazel, I know we've had a conversation previously about menstrual cycle and how you track it and the way you think about it. Would you like to sort of go into that a bit?
Sure. So this is something I got into, I would say, sort of 8 years ago now, when I came off my hormonal contraception and went on to the copper coil. And I found that my hormones just completely changed. Hormonal contraception can sort of balance your hormones quite well. We won't get into my views on hormonal contraception, but it was something I felt I needed to come off. And I felt like I was pretty much a completely different person. And I felt the ups and downs of my cycle in a way I had never felt before. And it was a struggle, particularly when, working in finance, you're expected to be linear in the way you come to work. So I started delving into this topic, and I read an excellent book called Period Power by Maisie Hill. And it talks about working with your cycle so that you, instead of working against the difficult days and being hard on yourself when you have them, thinking about where you're likely to be at different times of the month, what your skills will be at those times, and really leaning into it. So in this book, it uses the concept of seasons, and it's something that I've adopted since. So you've got spring, summer, autumn, and winter, with spring being just after your period, summer being as you approach ovulation, autumn being as you approach your period, and then winter being when you're bleeding. And it explores how your hormones change. And really in the first half, so in the spring and summer, as you would expect, you're kind of full of energy, full of confidence and enthusiasm. And that then tails off in the second half, where you become much more critical and lower energy. So for me, I was definitely experiencing those ebbs and flows, and I wanted to be able to try and manage my diary so that I could work with them. So what I have done is I put in my Outlook calendar, spring, summer, autumn and winter, so that I can look when I'm booking something in my diary that's important, where I'm likely to be. So if I look at the sort of different skills I might have at those times, in the spring, I'm typically full of ideas. So it's a good time for me to do my creative planning for the week ahead or the month ahead. When I'm in summer, I'm very confident and outgoing. So if I've got a big presentation or pitch I need to do, or if I need to get other people on board with an idea, it's a great time for me to do that. And then as I get into the second half, the critical week, the week that we all as women get moaned about for not being very easy to get on with, it's actually a really effective week to look at any problems you've been having with a critical eye, both at things in yourself, but also circumstances that may have maybe arisen at work or difficult challenges. And because you're very honest with yourself in those times. And then in the winter, I'm very good at editing. It's kind of the hunkering down, looking back at things, reflecting. And obviously I can't organize, in an ideal world, I'd fit everything into those perfect boxes, and I can't do that all the time. But certainly if I'm going to organize a big presentation and it's up to me when I book that in, I'll do it at the right time. So it's really effective. The other thing is, many people, when they track their cycles, will see that they have particularly difficult days. And I have one in the middle of my cycle, when I think, although it's a really positive time, the positive energy can become quite intense. And I know that I can, if I'm not careful, just kind of burn myself out that day. So it's good for me to know if I'm feeling that way, I can look in my tracker and be like, this is why. So I'm not going to be hard on myself. And then I would say roughly 8 days before my period, I will have a day where I can literally feel this kind of the doom fall on me. The best way to describe it, if anyone listening is a Harry Potter fan, the feeling that you would probably get if the Dementor came into the room, just like all the joy is sucked out of me, and I can feel it happen in my body. And again, when that happens, I know that, this isn't going to last forever. There's a reason for it, and I can get past it. And again, not be hard on myself. So I think having that knowledge about my cycle is really helpful. And also, if I need to have a conversation where I really need to advocate for myself and I need to be a bit stronger, actually that week, the autumn is a great time to do it. So it's thinking about working with your cycle instead of pushing through your cycle. And it's something that I think all employers should put on as training for colleagues, because it's a commercial thing to be able to help women enhance their performance and be generally happier and less hard on themselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's more the awareness of it all. I'm not aware of it as much as yourself, but I just feel like the last few years, I'm definitely getting perimenopausal. The week before my period, I'm angry. I'm frustrated. And a colleague that I share a room with, he can sense that. He knows you're going to come on your period soon. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. And I'll check what goes, oh, yeah, you're right. You can sense it. But I know, don't make a rash decision, because I could make a rash decision there going, that's it. I quit. I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to say this to that person. It's made me be a bit more aware of my cycle, because I know I'm not being me.
Because you are being you. You're just being a version of you that's perhaps less tolerant of other people's things that are intolerable.
They shouldn't be idiots, should they?
Exactly.
Not my fault.
You can see how easily you can feel out of control. And
absolutely.
That's number one source of stress and anxiety, feeling out of control and not being able to influence your environment and be the best you can be. It can be quite debilitating, really. I find because I'm on the other side, because I'm an oldie. I find that these spikes are really, really, it's like a sugar rush, and it takes its toll on my energy, on my mind, on my body. I think I was sharing with you the other day, when on the low days when I go for a run, I feel so angry at myself for not being to push myself. And so for that reason, a lot of times you just let things go and you don't go to the gym or you don't run because you feel like you're not going to be able to perform. And that only takes its toll further down, because everything is linked. So I like what you do, Hazel, because being in tune with how you are in yourself, in your body, can be really constructive in a way to sort of cut yourself a slack from time to time, give yourself space to process, and actually have the, to your point, Tracy, when you are in an environment with someone, to be able to laugh at things, but also to work together on creating that environment where you can actually say, look, I'm just going through this period. I can't really focus, or I can't really be present, or I can't really be as productive as. And it doesn't take away the fact that you can do all those things and be all those things.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you mentioned about the gym. So like in our gym, it happens to be a lot of women in the strength class. And you get some women where they're smashing their records. They're like, yes, I've lifted X amount. And then the others are like, I can't even lift half the weight I was doing. And the gym instructor, she's very much in tune with cycle. And she's like, where are you in your cycle? And she said, you need to note down where you are, because people tend to be underperforming when they're about to come on their period. And it's recognizing that, because it's so easy for them to quit this gym, because going to the gym is difficult enough, especially initially. But don't quit. This is not you. It's just your hormones. Next week you've got to smash it.
It's so true. Actually I was in a panel with. It was a bunch of us. It was a nutritionist, a physical therapist, a performance coach. There were like a bunch of people from like different areas. It was about 8 of us. And we realized that we were saying the same thing, and actually the same situation had different consequences in terms of like health, like well-being, the overall well-being, and there were like small adjustments you can make that could have had a good impact in terms of what you eat, how you eat, when you eat, what you exercise, when you exercise. It doesn't mean that you have to be super like scientific about it, but just listening to the rhythm of your mind and your body can really make a difference. Because ultimately what I see a lot of time, the way we shape our behaviors with money is in direct relationship with everything else.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about what you were talking about, the different seasons, and there's definitely, I'm not as strict or follow it like that, but I can definitely tell spending habits for me. I almost, for about 3 days after my period, go through a mania phase where I love spending on clothes. I'll be on Vinted and things like that. And I'm like, whoa, and I'm loving it and everything's great. And I feel dead positive and I'll have loads of creative ideas. And then it goes again. And I'm like, don't even know where that was, what that came from. And then going to the gym or a run when I've got like legs like logs. Yeah. And I'm thinking 10K today. I messaged you, didn't I, not long ago? And I was up there and I was like in Bristol on the Downs. And I was like, right, I'm doing a 10K. I'm done one for ages. And I got about 1.5 miles in and I was like, this is not happening today. It's like, oh, I'm out and I've done about 1.5 miles and I think that's all I can do today. And then a week later, I'll be flying around and it's no problem. So it's quite interesting how just those hormones changing can really impact.
Yeah, and I think it's, when you're a teenager or you're learning, you're going to have a period and this is what's going to happen to you. No one tells you about the other side. It's like perimenopause. What's that?
Do they?
No. And it's like, this is perimenopause. Oh, and this is menopause. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I still don't fully know what it means. I haven't been through it, but I've got a bit more awareness of it. But also employers aren't aware of it and the knock-on effect. Yeah. For myself, I'm definitely entering the perimenopause. I'm 41. Brain fog for me is phenomenal. It's unbelievable. I'll be talking, I'm midway, I'm like, what am I talking about? I remember having a presentation. It was in front of an audience and Emma was present. And then I think the presentation was about inheritance tax or something along those lines. And I'm talking and midway, I kind of gone blank.
Yeah.
And I don't think the people noticed, but I know that
only because I know you.
Because Emma knows me, she knew I'd gone blank.
The look in your eye.
And in that moment, I was thinking, oh my God, what do I do here? Yeah. I was like, do I break out in a dance or what do I do?
Distraction.
But and we were laughing about it afterwards, but it's happening more and more and more. And it does chip on your confidence thinking, oh, what if I do a presentation and it does it again? Or maybe I should step away from doing presentations because this is affecting, it's giving me a bit more anxiety. Yeah. And I think that relates to women in all walks of life when it comes to the work, when these symptoms are affecting their simple work life things that they were good at before and they're feeling, I'm not in my prime at the moment or I'm not doing it the way I hope I could do it or I could do it.
Doesn't it?
But that's the thing when you don't.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's just that you're having moments,
and it's
really short
that
moments, and it's giving you that
self-doubt. That's all it is.
We need to be in a world where you can be in that presentation and say, sorry, I'm having a bit of perimenopause, having a bit of brain fog. Bear with me for a second. I'm sure.
Give me 5 minutes.
Address the elephant in the room makes a big difference. I do think we have, a responsibility as women to be the people who start talking about these things and making it so normal.
Yeah.
I talk about my period with my boss periodically. If we're having a meeting and I feel like it's relevant to my frame of mind or something that's frustrated me, I might say, this has really frustrated me today, but I am at this point in my cycle. So, it might just be that I'm frustrated. Maybe we can talk about this next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just normalizing those conversations. And surprisingly, the men I do sort of have those conversations with, I will always ask permission first. As you probably gathered, I like to frame things. I'm like, can I share this? Is this oversharing? And they always say, I've got a wife and 2 daughters or something. They come back to me with, actually, this is fine.
I think if you're okay with it and you show you're okay with it, that almost opens the door a little bit for them to be a bit more chilled about it. Yeah. And actually the other thing, you're right, we have to talk about it, especially in employment. And I'm thinking about, the menstrual cycle, it's blooming painful to go into work for 5 days when in agony. I mean,
braving it.
Yeah. I remember doing a geography exam when I was young in school, and I started coming on my period in the middle of it. It was a 2.5 hour exam, and I had to just sit there and try and do this exam, and it was excruciating.
Yeah.
So to be, I'd have loved to have been able to put my hand up and be like, oh, actually, can I just go and take some painkillers or something? But I didn't. I just ploughed through, and I worry that there are women still are just sitting and bracing it for 5 days, trying to get things done, and aren't being as productive as maybe they could be if actually there was a little bit of leeway on it.
But also things that we probably don't have expertise in here, but things like endometriosis and like women's specific health issues, which cause lots of pain and lots of complications.
Horrific.
And unless we can talk about the experiences that all women have to do with their periods, because it's a totally normal thing. Those other conversations are so much harder because they're like taboo women's conversations.
That's it.
So we need to just,
absolutely,
it's part of the general vocabulary that we have at work.
But it's
absolutely.
refreshing that women like yourself have those constructive conversations, because and to sort of influence the shift between where we used to be. And so like the question, are you on period, as in like, are you crazy right now? Right?
It's like
are you being
insult.
irrational right now? We can't have a conversation right now, to being, okay, let me see what I can help you with, so we can have this rational conversation, or we can get to the bottom of things. That's a massive shift. And I think that's quite important, not to see it as a hindrance, to see it as a like normal thing. Imagine if men went through this, because I think they have their own phases of, and they're not as tangible, it's not as visible. But imagine how a man would feel if, it would be referred to whatever phase he was going through as being crazy. That's not, it's really diminishing,
it's not helpful,
right?
is it?
No, it's not helpful. How would that make you feel better or perform better?
Yeah.
But we also have to think that the language we use ourselves, because I was doing a presentation about this topic, and I referred to the time of my month when I'm a bit of a, and I won't say the word I used, but I described myself in a not very nice way for the week before my period. And then I corrected myself and said, no, actually, that's ridiculous. It's the time of the month where my hormones aren't making me agreeable. And I'm actually setting better boundaries. And because society expects us to be agreeable, that potentially offends people. And it's like reframing it as just a different phase of our cycle, and looking into how, there's really good qualities in each stage. And if we can feel that, then, I mean, what a blessing it is for women, rather than being linear and consistent and great at the same things all the time. We can be great at different things at different times in the month. I mean, that's, super women.
Yeah, I think so.
And I like the way you work with yourself to set yourself up for success. Because I think as you go through these cycles, it's easy to just focus, to have laser focus on what doesn't work. Whereas if you were to set up yourself for success in that way, in terms of like what actually works, what sustains your performance, and actually shift your focus on different things so that you feel energized by it. I think that's really, really important. I was talking to a couple the other day, and she said that through menopause, she was actually diagnosed with ADHD later on. And she said, I can't really explain to you how my approach changed. And they have all this, she has all this like erratic, what is perceived as, spending and so on. And we realized it was a combination of having a lack of purpose through like later life, with menopause, with like the cumulative effect of different elements. And actually working with them as a couple to actually strengthen that focus, like joint focus on what motivates them both. And actually we realized that they had some common ground in terms of like travel and buying a camper van. And I was like, okay, if you use that energy, because she would be like manic about like Vinted, because she mentioned Vinted as well. And I said, if you took that energy and you focused on what matters to you both, what would that look like? And actually, the conversation shifted, and instead of pointing fingers and say, you're the blame, you're to blame, now it's like, how can we work together? And they said, oh, actually, we can't sit still, because she can't sit still sometimes. And she said, I tried to explain to him, I don't have energy to process things, and I can't really sit at the table. And he gets frustrated because he's process driven. I said, well, do you remember last time when you talked to me about how you like going on walks, you take the dog? Yes. Okay, what if you use that process to walk the dog and talk about your joint outcomes? How are you going to achieve that? At the end of the walk, you sit down, you put on a paper 1 or 2 focus points, and you just do that. How about that? Oh,
that's doable. I said, instead of just focusing on what the shifts and the ebbs and flows and what doesn't work, how about if you focus or reset that approach, setting yourselves up for success?
Yeah.
I think that's a massive, massive journey of evolution for someone to go from feeling controlled by the environment and actually taking control where controllable is possible.
Yeah. I think you've raised an important point there about the impact it can have, just not on the person going through it, but the wider. You know, we talk about women in the workplace, but there'll be a lot of men in the workplace who's maybe wives or somebody they know is going through it. And I think if there's lots of support there, then that can be conducive to a better workplace and home place as well, better understanding. Before we move on, I just thought it'd be good to explain perimenopause and menopause, just in case there is anyone listening who wasn't sure. So perimenopause typically starts around 40s, but can start earlier, and it can last between 4 and 10 years normally. So it's just basically a range of symptoms when maybe periods are starting to get a little bit less frequent. If we have things like, Trace, you talked about, like brain fog, insomnia, there's 40 plus symptoms, apparently recognised symptoms.
Always waking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's another one, 3 a.m.
I feel like I've fall asleep by 3.
Yeah, and that. I've got a really heightened sense of smell all of a sudden. Everything smells a bit weird to me. And my poor other half is like going mad about it, because every time he comes near me at the moment, I'm like, what is that smell? Like, what's that? Everything smells a bit funny. Itchy ears is another one that I've talked to a few ladies about. So there's all sorts of different things. And then menopause is where you've had missed 12 periods in a row. Basically, that's it. Periods are finished.
And your hormones are more, they fluctuate more in perimenopause, and then in menopause they've kind of started leveling out, is that right?
Yeah, and apparently there's a post-menopause as well.
Oh, great.
Where symptoms start to get better, apparently. I think the big shock, the big shock to me was like, I was thinking, okay, you'd be young, you know, you get to maybe 60 and things start falling apart. And I was like, nobody talked about like perimenopause and menopause.
No, exactly.
I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm still young. I feel young sometimes, apart from the cracking in the morning when I'm getting up.
And I remember people used to refer, like, I had this picture in my mind that there was like a tap, you turn it off and then that's menopause and then goodbye. Everything you knew before, not this prolonged period of anguish and just transformation. I mean, I call it my walrus years, because I literally leave the house without a mustache. I come home, it's like a fully like literally hair on my face is just, and when you deal with clients, when you are self-conscious, you stress. Like, I feel like I have to have like an army for like tea, like an army pack, like, you know, when they have like the Swiss knife and everything else. It feels like, for me, it's like, have I got this? Have I got that? So like a race, or like a thing. And it's just like frustrating and debilitating, because instead of focusing on my job, I have to think, oh, do I have something on my face? And it's something that nobody trained me for, nobody warned me about. And this like insomnia when you have to deliver, and it's usually like, especially when I have to deliver like a workshop or a webinar the next day, I can't really sleep. And when you add no sleep for several days, you're like zombie walking into life.
You're just existing.
You're existing.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Like, I find that my words will go at the end of a sentence. And me and my other half will sit and I'll go, it's and I'll try and explain what it is. Like, I'll describe the thing.
It's like a charade.
But he can't remember either. So I always joke now, like, by the time we're, you know, in our 60s, 70s, we're probably going to both be there, not be able to communicate like each other.
I also think my memory.
That's another
I can't
one.
remember what I did.
Shocking.
An hour ago.
I went to the gym the other week, and I got to my locker and like try and remember only 3 numbers on it, the combination. I stood there for 20 minutes, just couldn't remember. But the thing that made me laugh was this lady was there and she said, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah, I just can't for the life of me remember." And actually, to the women stood there, it's nothing new. They're like, "Oh yeah." She said, "Don't worry." She said, "I came out the pool a few weeks ago." And I couldn't remember my combination, and I had to go to reception dripping wet. But don't worry, they've got bolt cutters out there. I was thinking, to be fair, that could have been worse, couldn't it? Dripping in reception with no shoes on, no towel. Like, excuse me, I can't remember my combination. So I'm like, this is just the beginning.
And after you've spent your whole life trying to be the best you can be and be a credible person, there's this moments where like, have no idea what I'm saying, how I say it. If I can just stand in front of you and not crumble, maybe I'll burst into tears at some point.
I just feel you've gone through, you've had children, and now you've figured yourself out. And you're right then, girls, I've got this. I understand it. And then bang, because perimenopause. What is happening?
I know.
You got to laugh at it, otherwise you'll cry.
I know, but there is actually a serious side to menopause as well. You know, I was reading up about it. I was looking at suicide rates, and for the last 10 years in the UK, the highest suicide rates for age range for women is between 45 and 51, which happens to be obviously in that bracket for menopause and perimenopause. And I was reading up Kathy Burke. She's well known for saying about her journey. She had some really awful thoughts about suicide when she was going through it at the age of 51. So there's a very serious side to it.
It's really important because we have to remember when it comes to our profession, we're dealing with clients. We've got women sitting in front of us, and we have to be conscious of their ages and kind of thinking, they might not tell us or menopausal or perimenopausal, but we have to kind of consider that. And if you feel, and it goes back to what we've talked about, understanding our clients is very much like this person is speaking the way very potentially vulnerable, but they're not speaking like they normally speak, and it's kind of taking that step back and kind of going, is this them or is it their symptoms? Is it perimenopause? Is it menopause that's talking here?
Is there a way we can incorporate something maybe as part of the fact finding process to help women feel open to say, you know, I'm at that age, I'm going through the menopause? I mean, not everyone's going to volunteer that information, but there's some sort of open questions maybe we can use, or some way of being able to incorporate that as a thing we should be asking regularly as part of the natural process, just like I would ask any medical history in the family, you know, that sort of thing.
We have in our fact find some quite fact find sounding questions about vulnerability, and I try and catch them all with a question sort of for anybody, which would be something along the lines of, is there anything that you experience long term or anything you're going through temporarily that will impact the way you communicate with me or the way you're thinking, and that I should be aware of so I can adapt how I work? And it's a broad statement, and it's quite soft, but it gives permission for people.
Do you think they would think, oh yeah, do you think at the top of their mind they'll go, yeah, I'm menopausal? Do you think from that?
I guess, well, I don't know because I'm not menopausal. But I'm going to put that question out to you ladies, being perimenopausal and potentially menopausal. Do you think you would feel comfortable answering that question?
I think it depends on you as the advisor, whether the client feels comfortable to say. You know, I've had clients where she came in and you could see she was flustered and all this and then it's like, you know, she was running late and I said, do you want to go to the toilet beforehand? Do you want a cup of tea? Just get us all settled. And then she started getting really hot in the room and the room wasn't hot. And then she was like, look, I'm just going to say it to you. I'm sorry. I'm a right mess. I'm menopausal and I'm having a moment that these last few days has been a bit of a nightmare for me. So she was comfortable to tell me. I don't know what I'd have done had she have not said that to me. Maybe I would have kind of gone, might have said, right then, do you want me to send you all the notes that I've written just so you can read what I've written to see if you agree? So when you're in a better position, you might look back at what we've discussed. So I might have done it indirectly. It'd be great if I had the confidence to kind of to say it directly. But I don't know, it's kind of like, it's very much like the divorce. What happens if you get divorced? It's kind of very sensitive questions, whether we're brave enough to ask them.
But similar to the divorce, I think when people go through the divorce, it's like a reactive thing. Now I need to learn how to do this thing. And I think with menopause, although I see not often enough, but obviously increasingly so, people bring the menopause awareness into their workplaces. It's mostly women who are approaching that stage that attend those webinars. Women, like younger women, wouldn't think about attending those webinars. And actually it's quite important, like with everything, to do more preventative work rather than intervention or, you know, reactive, like rescuing work. Because I think in that awareness building phase, you would encourage more women to actually think about menopause in terms of their bodies and minds. But also I think increasingly we should add the financial dimension to it. I don't think it's spoken about enough. You know, the framework, we often in coaching apply the HALT framework when we talk about the symptoms or the emotional state that generates obviously the behavior. And we talk about being hungry and angry and lonely and tired. That's what HALT stands for. And it's used in anger management as a way to spot the negative states that lead to negative thoughts and negative action taking. Yeah. But we don't talk about it in the context of menopause. So I think if we were to become more aware about the connection between mental health, physical health, and financial health, I think in those, when we talk about financial well-being, we have to bring awareness around that and as early as possible. And the other way around, when we talk about menopause, we need to talk about money and money behavior in the same context. It's all super linked.
Yeah. Do you think that should be more like education?
I think education is first.
Financial literacy. Yeah. But actually, again, I remember having like the sex education class or two, not many of them, but maybe bring in like further down the line into that as well. At least
just paint the picture of that journey. Yeah. In a similar way as we do the cash flow modeling, you do it more than I do. But just those, I always, when I talk to my clients, I always encourage them to put things on a timeline to kind of go, what are the milestones there? Create awareness, create familiarity. Get uncomfortable before you get comfortable. Yeah. And I think not many people do that in terms of how the woman's journey evolves. What does that look like? How would they feel like? Stages and ages and so on. For them to get really clear that there will be times, and actually this is why we ask you to invest earlier. So you can have the discretion to stop working or decrease the workload, things like that, just to see how can you create more options, more choice. Yeah. For you to navigate all these ebbs and flows. Yeah. I think it's not, we don't do this often enough.
And I think it's important for the workplace to be aware of this as well, because what we have to remember, this is happening to women at their peak of their careers, where, they're generally at their senior roles. Yeah. And because of these symptoms that we get in, we might go, that's it, I'm stepping back, I'm going to reduce my hours. Now that's a financial impact then to the company. Yeah. So if they got programs in place so we can better educate and understand what we're going through, it's going to only gain for the company.
Yeah. And educate colleagues.
Absolutely.
I mean, definitely. It does seem to be something that, from listening to what you're talking about, that for educating the women and men, as a piece of, you need to understand this for your colleagues because everyone experiences the behaviour of others. Yeah. But also, I'm just thinking while you were talking, Alina, about the life stages. As financial planners, I think we're all very used to thinking about how when people approach retirement, they might find that transition really difficult. But we're not used to talking about when people approach the potential perimenopause and the menopause, how they might find that transition difficult. And perhaps that's something that we as financial planners, in the businesses we work in, should have as part of our compulsory CPD for helping those clients.
Absolutely, because when we learn to be financial advisors, it's very technical, isn't it? It's about these are the life stages, or you get married, this, blah, 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 blah. There's no mention of this part here.
Yeah. Like I was talking about in one of the other episodes, we always talk about like death, critical illness. And actually, we don't talk about perimenopause or menopause, but it can have just as big an impact on somebody's life financially, and particularly as anything else.
And then probably that boils back down as like, well, what questions do we ask the client? Well, we don't know. We really don't know because we haven't had.
I think it's about building that relationship, isn't it? Although I do think to myself sometimes, well, I am a woman, and me being a woman financial advisor asking another woman about perimenopause is going to probably feel a bit more comfortable and a bit more.
It's more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if there are many men out there that want to talk about that or ask about that. I don't know.
Yeah. We might be more comfortable asking the probing questions anyway, because I think even with retirement conversations with men, I know I'm very likely to talk about how they're preparing for their retirement emotionally. Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily a question that's going to get asked a lot.
No.
But then coming back to what you were saying, Tracy, about how would you approach that conversation with a woman if you thought she was going through some menopausal symptoms? Well, if as financial planners we had it built into our process that actually the menopause was a stage of life that we spoke about as standard, then it would just be a natural part of the conversation.
Just need to signpost it, don't we? I'm going to ask you some questions around health, life stages, and maybe list what they all are. And then say, are any of those impacting you?
Yeah, and understand how to ask those questions, because a lot of the partners ask questions from a place of, I want to sort this out. And sometimes you know, as a woman going through this, firstly, a lot of women don't have the language. We haven't been trained. Like, how many mothers do you know, that shared what they've gone through. Usually they curl inwards.
It's funny you mention that, because I have been having that conversation with Hallie recently, because my behaviour has changed, and I worried that she's going to think that she's doing something wrong by the way I'm reacting with certain things. So I've had to explain to her about it at 7.
Yeah,
but my mum never would have done.
See, no. So when you don't have the language to put your thoughts and feelings out there for people to understand what you're going through, and actually have the space where you can just vent, you know, to kind of explain how you feel inside. I don't think that generates that creates the environment where you get asked the right questions, and typically it's not a question like a fix you're looking for, because there is no fix to it. I mean, there are medications and stuff, you know, things that you can do to rebalance your hormones, but actually you want that space where you feel seen and understood and supported. That's all you're after when you go through those stages, typically. And be given the platform where you can figure out a process that works for you. And to your point, Hazel, you know, to have that, but you had to take ownership that wasn't given to you to kind of go, Hazel, have you thought about this? But when you go into a workplace, wouldn't it be amazing if they had a procedure to say, welcome, we value you. Here's what we thought that may suit you, and give you that training, that awareness, and to say, look, this is how we talk about this. You know, how we put it into words, and how we have those constructive conversations at the workplace. Now, then you can take it home. Now you know how to talk to your daughter about, how you talk to your sons about, without feeling like you're justifying yourself, not from a place of defensiveness, but actually to make it work for everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we've got private medical insurance through a company, and they've got a menopause line with a trained menopause nurse, but it's not enough, is it? You know, there's going to be certain women in work, probably maybe the odd man, that'll use that line, but nobody else is probably going to think about it very much. So I think you're right. We need active training, probably repetitive training on an annual basis, let's say, just to remind people that this can happen, this is how to handle it, and so forth. And the other thing I picked on there, you talked about treatment. When I was doing some research around menopause and perimenopause, it sounds as if maybe the medical side of things are letting women down. Lots of women are being treated for depression and having antidepressants given to them rather than HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So there seems to be more education needed even on the medical side, which is quite an eye-opener.
I think on the way we think about things as society too, I know this is kind of very big picture, but going through a hormonal transformation in your 40s and 50s isn't something we should be thinking about fixing, obviously assisting with in terms of medication, but we don't think about fixing adolescents because they're going through their hormonal changes. And it's just a different transformational part of life. And I think, I mean, you know, years ago, the sort of older women were seen as like this wise, wonderful woman who had things to impart in society. And now it's kind of like you become old and you're irrelevant. And I think we should just be looking at these as a learning, you know, it's a stage of life where undoubtedly everyone who goes through it is going to learn different things about themselves. They're going to learn different resilience skills, and it's stuff that you can pass on. And so it should be celebrated. You know, we should celebrate having our first period. We should celebrate the fact that we are now progressing into the next stage of life, because it's exciting. It's just, you know, framing it in the right way.
Yeah. There are women actually that don't have any symptoms at all, or very, very few, and actually can just go through it quite smoothly, which is quite nice.
Yeah, but again, and some not. Like I have friends who reacted really badly to HRT, and what I didn't really understand was that the fact there is a dialing up or dialing down until you find your own
dose.
Who knew?
Yeah.
And then, so if you imagine women going through that and going absolutely off track with everything, mind, body, and finance, how do you cope with that when you feel like your whole world is turning upside down? As a woman, it's a horrendous roller coaster to experience. And if you don't have the support system to back you, so at work, there may be a performance review and they don't understand what's going on with you. Right? How do you handle that? So back to your statistics about suicide. I'm not surprised. There's some, like, if you watch kids going through sugar rushes, how tremendously impactful they are, right? For themselves and for the people around them. Well, you multiply that by 10 times more, and you see a grown up rediscovering what they're about and trying to make sense of the world around them. It can be quite severe. So I think with this phase, it's awareness, but also that kind of, again, it goes back to trust. When you're going through change and you feel like you have very little control, what do you do to put in place the elements that can help someone reclaim their trust in themselves to navigate it? Put systems in place, starting with the language you use, with the education we provide, with the processes around the procedures that we have internally to support these people, and also the environment, normalizing those conversations, embracing the change, and make it so somebody feels like they're evolving into the wise selves rather than
a problem that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, exactly.
Or someone who's fearful of being caught out because they forgot something they said halfway through a presentation. It's a shame that that fear needs to exist. It doesn't need to exist.
Shame
and shame.
Just
the shame.
Like you say, Tracy, you work hard to get to a certain point in your career, and then it all starts feels like it's falling apart because your body and your brain isn't doing what it's been doing.
My head's over there, my legs are over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And it, like you said, it knocks your confidence, and then you start doubting yourself.
And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And you just need to be able to address the elephant in the room.
And it's difficult because as a woman, I don't know about yourselves, but I always feel I'm always trying to prove myself.
Yeah.
Of course.
I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And then being a woman, I've got this coming lingering. It's like,
I can't
no,
do
you can't do it. You can't do it. It's like, oh gosh,
you can't
give me a break.
control it, can you? That's
you
the thing. And you don't know when it's going to happen.
That's why it's so important to have these conversations. Don't worry, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's happening, but we can help you.
Yeah. Making it visible. It's okay to mess up when you're you're doing a presentation and you forget your words and,
being able to have a conversation with, let's say you're doing that presentation with someone else and saying, right, if this happens mid-conversation, look out for it and jump in.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, it was literally a second or two.
Yeah, well,
no
it's
one
because I
noticed
knew you so
that.
well. It's just your eyes, like,
you,
the
it was
glaze. I was like,
what am I meant to be saying now?
But if you had forgotten for longer,
I know.
just to have been able to say, actually, if that happens, Emma, I know you're in the audience, but jump in.
Yeah.
Or to your colleague that you're with,
Two
jump in.
perimenopausal women trying to finish.
Yeah, you'd be like, what was I going to say? I was like, I can't remember the word either.
But it sounds that it felt like a lifetime. And if you add these little moments, in several presentations, it's got this compounded effect on your self-belief.
Absolutely.
And I think that is quite longer term. It compounds and it amounts to a lot to feel overwhelming, to feel disempowering. And I think, women going through these phases should be allowed, it's like this invisible disability, really. You can't really put your finger on it because she's functional. She's, she might have this, she shows up, she drags herself out of bed most days.
Yeah.
And
has a shave.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Just remember.
But you see, these things should be seen as normal and actually discussed in a way that doesn't feel shameful at all. And then when it comes to money behavior and money habits, I think not many people talk about it often enough to kind of go, it's okay, allow yourself to cope however you need for a while and then reset and then we can go,
And if you're having these open conversations, then one, you're probably likely to be more self-aware, so more able to control the behaviors.
Yeah.
But if you're in a relationship, you can say, you can agree parameters, how your husband can say to you when you're about to do that thing that you wouldn't otherwise do and impulsively spend, that they have permission to say something to you. You're not going to, have a problem with that, to put that scaffolding around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rules of engagement.
Yes.
Right? Like you do have in a workplace, to have that at home as well, to kind of, it's like the safe signal, the safe code kind of, because a lot of people, when you withdraw, when you hide within feelings and put a brave front, I think it doesn't work for you as a person to process what you're going through.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help someone else next to you to understand because you don't talk about it. And often you see coping through overeating, overdrinking, maybe alcohol. We've seen a lot of people going through gambling addiction through COVID. It's because there's just ways to gain control or reclaim control by, using unhealthy or unproductive habits. And that, that's why we've seen a lot of, I deal with a lot of people who struggle with debt, credit card debt, because of all this like sliding terrain that goes from mental health, physical health and money health. Everything is linked. And we just need to be paying attention to those signals, because lack of success leave clues. And you just need to follow the thread, just pull the thread gently. And I know in a lot of places, I think it's seen as like an unproductive way to spend your time. Yet another thing on someone's agenda. Yeah. But I think if you were to address these points early, you wouldn't have to deal with uncomfortable conversations for lack of productivity, for presenteeism, for like too many, sick days and all sorts, or people leaving work or altogether, losing talent. I think those are more unproductive for a business than those conversations that ought to happen in the preventative stage to make it work for everyone involved.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So lots of really good tips there. I suppose to finish, just one final thing. If you had one of those really old-fashioned bosses who you just know he's going to cringe if you mention anything to do with menopause, but you need to have that conversation, how would you approach it?
I would just say, just even a small conversation, don't go bang. I would just start subtly.
Not full details.
No, I'll start subtly and then see how the reaction is. Yeah. And then maybe if it's a bit too much of a reaction, maybe step back, and then a few days later come again.
Approach it again.
It depends on the individual, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I would, as you would probably guess.
Go for it.
I'd go straight in. I'd be like, I need to have a conversation with you. I really need to be straightforward with you about it because it's something that impacts me at work. Bang.
Done.
This is it.
That's what I would like.
Funny, the different approaches. Same question, but different approaches. Yeah. How would you approach
I would say, like in all, it's boring, but it's effective in coaching work, the contracting bit, to say there will be times when I will be reacting in a unfamiliar way.
Yeah.
Or you just get that framing, because I like how Hazel frames everything to kind of go to prepare the terrain to say, I deliver, I perform, I give my all, but there will be times when I can't do that for this reason. So let's have an honest conversation now, and not from a place of conflict or just to make this a collaborative work. And it's not going to go well first day, and it's not going to go well next day. But I think even the most traditional managers, they have a human side at some point that will connect. And if they value you, they will want to keep you.
Yeah.
And, like I think you, Hazel, may have mentioned that, all of these men have a wife, kids at home, or maybe some daughters. And I think that there may be times in their lives when they can actually relate
to it. Yeah.
And I think if you appeal to the human side and you bring that up, not in a needy way, in a way that, look, I want to make this work. I think over time, tide may change. And if it doesn't change, you're not a tree. You can change work.
Yeah.
Find your own environment, because that's the most important thing. Because if you work in an environment that doesn't support you, you will fade away. There's a burnout and stress and anxiety, and that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Also, if we have those conversations, they might learn something from us that they can take away and have, help them at home.
Yeah, something they've never thought about before.
More often than not, like you mentioned, the mentee-mentor relationship.
Exactly.
I think you can't really expect for everyone to know everything. And I think there is a golden opportunity for anyone wanting to evolve. And arguably that's where, success lies, with people who want to evolve, to want to grow. They will look in the untapped areas of their lives to draw energy and information from, and shift a bit the mindset and the way they do things. So I think that's usually a clue that you're in the right company, if they're willing to travel with you.
Yeah. Fab. Well, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah. A huge thank you to Alina, Hazel and Tracy for joining me on the Wealth and Women podcast, and for you for listening. To find out more, you can find useful links in the show notes. You can also explore related articles and more podcast episodes on the Personal Finance Professional website, many of which can be recorded as CPD and logged directly on the site with a click. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.